Mid-stage businesses, so growth hacking tactics for mid-stage businesses. So at this stage, early stage, we looked at growing some very basic metrics. So we looked at customer validation and customer satisfaction. We looked at mailing list growth, really basic stuff. In the mid-stage, once you have a product, once you are at your version 1, you've started to acquire customers. Now you're looking to grow various other metrics, like really the key metrics of any kind of tech business or any startup. So you're looking to grow traffic and conversion rates, revenue, social media interactions, all the usual KPIs basically. You'll have these slides, as I said, so I'm going to just jump a little bit ahead to here. Sorry. So one of the metrics that we use to measure, or one of the metrics that you can use to track whether or not you're growing in the right way. One would be unique users. I don't think I need to explain this one. Everyone knows what that means. Another one would be conversion rate. So especially if you're running a startup that's selling anything, if you have any kind of, if you're doing e-commerce, such as the luxury cat food company, or if you're doing SaaS, where your customers sign up for a free service and then end up converting to a paid service, then one metric that you'll be looking at very closely is conversion rate. I mean, conversion rate doesn't necessarily have to mean a purchase. It can also mean a sign-up. But yeah, this is one of the other metrics that you'll be aiming to grow. So the tactics that we're going to look at later will be focusing on this, and also unique users, i.e., website traffic or downloads. Also, you'll be focusing on open and click rates. So once the business is past the kind of early stages, in the early stages, if you're mentoring any startups or with your own startups, as I said, it's generally just good to try to grow your mailing list. That's a very fundamental, a very fundamental goal. It doesn't get very granular. Once you're in the middle stage, then you can start looking a bit more closely at your mailing list, at your email strategy. So it's fine to keep growing it, but at this stage, now we want to think a bit more about, okay, it's growing and growing and growing, but we also need to look at increasing the open rate and increasing the click rate. So open rate is influenced mostly by the subject line. So you've got to get better and better at writing good subject lines and testing subject lines. The click rate would be influenced by your email design, your email copywriting, and this is also something you have to, on an ongoing basis, just get better and better at. And I think this applies especially to any startup that's doing e-commerce. Is basically a lot of the sales are driven by email marketing. In my old company, I'd say 60-70% of all our sales were driven purely by our email strategy. And let's just jump ahead. Okay, so there's one case study before we get into the actual tactics that we can look at that gives us an example of a more kind of mid-stage growth hack. So this is a demonstration of decoy pricing or anchor pricing. So this is a technique where you try to influence your customers to choose a particular pricing level or choose a particular product. So this is an example that a guy, what's his name? The guy who wrote the book Predictably Irrational. So he presented this offer to 100 people. He's a lecturer at a university. 3 choices to get a subscription to The Economist. One was a web-only subscription for $59. One was a print subscription for $125, and the other was web and print for $125. So what would you choose? 3, okay? So some people might choose 1 because they just don't want the print. Then the other people would choose 3. Do you think many people would choose 2? Not really, right? It seems like such a bad deal compared to 3, which is correct. So this is the result. Nobody chose 2. 84% chose option 3, and the others chose option 1. So 3 obviously seems like the best deal, but if nobody chooses 2, why don't we just remove it? So what do you think would happen if we removed it? Yeah, that's the key part. More people would choose number 1. So yeah, more people would end up going for the cheaper. They would. It's much easier to compare the prices basically between just 2. With the extra third option, so in other words, the first example, the option 2, that middle option, the real point of that, the real reason it existed, was just there to make the number 3 option seem like a really, really good deal. So this is what we call, it's like decoy pricing or anchor pricing, where you use a pricing level or a certain product just as a method of realigning the customer expectations of what things should cost, often to try to get them to buy the higher priced item. And you see this everywhere, in restaurants, in retail, in software sales. So these are we're going to go through, there's actually quite a lot of content. We're just going to kind of whiz through them. But as I said, you have the slides, so if I go a bit too fast, you can read the content later. So anchor pricing, just to give you a few more examples, the Economist example was an example where we wanted the customer to choose a higher priced item. But you can use anchor pricing in the other direction. So by adding a really, really expensive item, you get them to choose the middle option, and the middle option is the one that actually you want people to choose. So for example, if you're a steak restaurant, you might have a $50 steak, a $60 steak, and a $150 steak. The reason that the $150 steak is there is not necessarily because you want to sell it. You actually want to sell more of the New Zealand steak. Maybe your profit margin is the highest on that one. So the reason the $150 steak is there is just to realign customer expectations so that more people end up choosing the $60 steak. If that was not there, maybe more people would choose the $50 steak. They would just automatically choose the cheapest option. So yeah, just as an example, this is a very random example, but you can see this on restaurant menus everywhere, where often there is a high-priced item. For example, this $95 platter of oysters, or 95 euros, or francs, or whatever this is. And it seems very expensive. And if the menu looked just like this, maybe nobody would choose that. It just seems too expensive compared to everything else. But with a 145 euro option sitting right next to it, suddenly the 95, I don't know if it's dollars or euros, the $95 one seems a lot cheaper. So you end up selling more of the $95 one than you would if you didn't have this $145 option. So it realigns the customer expectations on whether things are expensive or not. There's all sorts of hacks around pricing. Like, for example, it's not in this presentation, but another thing that you'll often see on restaurant menus is that they'll remove the zeros from the pricing. So instead of saying 15.00, it would say just 15, which it helps people to forget that they're looking at money. They just feel like they're looking at a number. So again, it's another way of just kind of hacking people's psychology a little bit and getting them to not make their purchase decision based purely on price. You either get them to compare it with the price of another product, or you get them to forget that they're even looking at a price. Piggyback hack. So this is where in the middle stages of a business, you start to think more about content marketing. Content marketing is probably the number one way that I've driven customer acquisition for my SaaS startup. By content marketing, I mean mainly writing blog content, good blog content that brings people in, people from your target audience, and then you try to convert them into a free trial or convert them into a download for your app. The piggyback hack is just a simple way of coming up with content ideas for your blog. It can be very difficult to constantly come up with new ideas for content for your blog, especially if you're doing like B2B, where often it's not such a sexy thing to write about. It can be hard to come up with inspiration. This is just a simple way of coming up with content ideas that are almost guaranteed to have an audience somewhere. Very simple principle. You basically find a popular piece of content within your industry, written by someone famous. You form an opinion on it, and then you write your own piece of content based on that. I'll just show you an example. So this is the original topic. So this is a guy called Seth Godin, very famous guy. And he just wrote this piece of content about a hierarchy of business-to-business needs. It's a pretty good post. I mean, most of his posts get a lot of social shares, and he's a thought leader in this space. But just to give you an example of a piggyback on this post, this is another blog written by some other guy who's less famous than Seth Godin. And he has written a post. His title is Why I Don't Agree with Seth Godin on That Last Post. So it begins by referencing the previous post. In his May 29th entry, I'm going to challenge him on this point, etc., etc. So the piggyback hack basically just says, if you base your content on a piece of popular content, you're almost guaranteed to find an audience for your content, because people will, like Seth Godin fans, for example, will be frustrated by this and they'll hate you for it and they might share it. Then people who don't like Seth Godin will agree with you and they'll share your article. It's just a very simple way of coming up with content ideas. But the important part is you have to form some kind of opinion on the original content, whether you agree with it or you don't agree with it. It's better to disagree. It's just a bit more controversial and a bit more conducive to social sharing. The headline hack, we're going to go into this in a little while. This is what our next task is about. But the headline hack, basically every single website, every single landing page has some kind of headline at the top of it. And the headline is probably the most important part of your landing page, because people are very lazy these days. So you can have a beautifully designed landing page with all sorts of content written by a very expensive copywriter, but actually 90% of people are just going to ignore all of that. And the only part that a lot of people read is your big headline at the top that basically states what your mission is, what your app is, what your company does. And often just by optimizing this part, just by testing that one headline, you can affect your conversion rate up or down. So this is something that you have to test. There's loads and loads of articles on how to write a good headline. You can Google headline formulas for more inspiration. But one easy pattern is this one. So do something desirable in a surprisingly small amount of time or effort. So this is just a pattern. You've got to plug in your own words. But for example, become a certified SEO consultant in just 7 days, or send a press release in just 1 click. That's an actual headline that I've used, the bottom one. I used to run a press release distribution service, which was acquired a couple of years ago. And this was the headline that I used at the top of the page that resulted in the best conversion rate. Unboxing hack, this is a good one for companies that ship physical goods. Unboxing hack basically just says, the point of the unboxing hack is to get more people sharing about you on social media, specifically the more visual social media like Instagram. This basically says the more attractive you make your unboxing experience. Unboxing is when There's loads and loads of YouTube videos about unboxing where people buy something and then they video themselves unboxing it. It's kind of weird, but the reason people do that is because often companies who make physical products put a lot of effort into how the product is packed. Apple products are very nicely packed. They come in a nice, very sleek box, and the product looks very nice inside it. But it's not just big companies. There's startups as well that do this kind of thing where, for example, beauty box companies are kind of notorious for this. They'll pack their products really nicely, which ends up with their users taking photos of the unboxing experience and posting it on Instagram, which obviously is basically free advertising for the company. So this one, obviously not so free to, this one costs a bit of money to implement. But for physical companies, companies shipping physical goods, it's one of the easier ways that they can get kind of free and exponential advertising for themselves. The can't go back hack, this is one of my favorites. It's super simple. Basically, it says that anywhere that you have a registration page or like a sign-up page, just don't let your customers go back. Don't let the users go back. Once they get to that page, like how often when you get to like a registration page, there's still the logo at the top, and then if you click the logo, you just go back to the home page. If you just remove that link to the home page, the conversion rate for that page increases. This is something that I can almost guarantee, that if you prevent your users from going back, you'll increase your conversion rate on your registration page. So this goes for apps as well. If your app has a sign-up page where there's a form where the user has to put in their email address and etc., if you just don't let them go back, you'll increase the conversion rate. So some examples of that. Groupon and a lot of websites like this are quite notorious for using this hack. And the reason they use it is because it really works. So Groupon, for example, I don't think they do this currently, but back when they were very, very aggressively signing up new customers, if you went to the Groupon homepage, this thing would pop up. And then, normally you would expect to see an X at the top here that you can click to close this thing, but there's no X. And even sometimes you'd expect to be able to click the background and then this would disappear, but can't do that either. So the only way to get rid of this is basically to sign up. Or actually, I think you can click this thing down here.
Last time it wasn't
and
there.
then it goes. Yeah, last time it wasn't there. So I think during their very aggressive expansion mode, you basically had to sign up or you just couldn't see anything. Another example, I haven't got the example here, but another example would be Amazon. So when you buy things on Amazon, when you get into the checkout process, you can only go forward. You can't go back. And obviously, Amazon, size of Amazon, they've obviously tested that process. And they found that, if you let people go back, then people start to, if you give people the option to go back and fiddle with their cart contents and stuff like that, then you end up with people who don't end up checking out. And what they want is to just push you towards that checkout process. Almost in a related way, this was the landing page design that I ended up with that ended up converting the best. And it's kind of related to the can't go back hack in that on the landing page itself, there is a sign-up form. So sometimes you'll see maybe you'll have a button that says sign up now or a button that says, take the tour or something like that. In my case, I just found that if I put the sign up form on the home page, that converted really well. Your mileage may vary though. This is not a cut and dry rule for every website. So this is something that I tested. The PowerPoint conversion hack. So this is a way of bumping up your SEO rankings, which is maybe something that I shouldn't be talking about at Google, but it's legit. It's not a black hat hack. It's So basically, this one is about a website called SlideShare. Do you know SlideShare? Yeah. So SlideShare gets really, really good Google rankings because there's a lot of really good content on SlideShare. So this hack says that if you can if you put your content on SlideShare, then you're more likely to appear on the front page of Google via SlideShare. So what I mean by that is, if you're writing content for your blog, your business blog, it's quite difficult to get onto the page 1 of Google because Google looks at backlinks, looks at who's linking you, how much authority you have. It looks at a whole bunch of things, but it looks at the age of your website. Are you a new website? Are you an old website? If you're a startup, then you're probably a pretty new website. So Google's not going to throw you on page 1. There'll probably be a lot of other content that'll be on page 1 before you. However, if you take that content and if you turn it into a SlideShare, if you turn it into a presentation, and you put that presentation onto SlideShare, you stand a bit of a better chance of being on page 1 of Google. So just to give you an example, this is a company called Kissmetrics, and they're an analytics company. They don't do anything particularly sexy, and the kind of search terms that they compete for, or the kind of search terms that they compete for are very, very competitive. So they have a blog, but they also have a SlideShare account where they put a lot of their converted blog content. They make it into a slideshow with extra photos, and made it a bit more bite-sized to fit the slideshow format. And they end up they're on page 1 of Google for a lot of really competitive terms. So this one is like affiliate marketing, increased revenue, right? Very competitive terms. If you're trying to do if you're doing a paid ad campaign for these terms, it's very expensive. You'll end up spending a lot of money. But because they're on SlideShare, and because SlideShare has good Google Karma, their post on SlideShare ends up on page 1 for this. So obviously, this is not it's not as good as your blog being on page 1, but it's not bad. Obviously, your job as the marketer is then to get the user who clicks on this and then views your slideshow to then click through to your blog or to your website somehow. That's the challenge, but at least you're on page 1 to begin with, and at least they're getting exposed to your content and to your brand. The Open Graph hack, in a similar way, the previous hack is about getting onto or getting more organic clicks or more organic traffic. This is about getting more traffic from specifically Facebook. So a lot of content gets shared on Facebook. How can you get more people to click on your stuff when it pops up in their newsfeed? So if you're writing blog content and then one of your customers or one of your users goes and shares it on Facebook because they liked it, how do you make sure that as many people as possible from that person's audience clicks it and comes to your website? So one way is to get smart about using Open Graph tags. Open Graph tags basically control how your content looks on Facebook. One way that manifests is using Open Graph tags. You can specify, you can tell Facebook what image to use in the Facebook news feed when your content pops up. And most of the viral websites like Viral Nova and BuzzFeed, they're very smart about what photo they tell Facebook to use. So Viral Nova, for example, likes to use photos like this. So these will pop up in the Facebook news feed, and Viral Nova adds a little red arrow. Can you guess why they do that? Yeah, it just piques people's curiosity. If it was just the photo by itself, then it wouldn't be that interesting. But because it's got this red arrow, people feel curious about it, and then they click it. And Viral Nova tells Facebook to specifically use these photos by using Open Graph tags. because these photos might not actually be in the content itself. They don't have to be. By using the Open Graph tag, you can tell Facebook to use a completely separate photo that doesn't necessarily have to be in the article itself. Another example, this is something that I do, for example, with the content that I create, is I'll overlay a title on the graphic and add some branding as well, and then I tell Facebook to use these specifically to use these photos. And I give Facebook the exact size that it wants, so that I can basically control exactly how it should look. YouTube SERP hack. SERP stands for Search Engine Results Page. This is pretty similar to the SlideShare hack, so I won't spend too much time on this. This is saying that in a very similar way to the SlideShare hack, YouTube also gets very good Google Karma. I wonder why. It's like a big YouTube logo on here. So pretty much for a lot of search terms, even B2B ones, and especially how to cook something, or how to make something, or how to fix something. For all of those types of search queries, there will always be a YouTube video or two on page 1 of Google. So this says that if you can produce video content based off your blog content, then you also stand a pretty good chance of being on Google page 1. So for recipe or any kind of how-to content, it's a pretty good hack to use. The roadblock hack, this is where you kind of force your users to sign up for something by pushing it in their face. We already saw an example, which is they're actually getting really blatant now, where they used to look like the Groupon one. Oops. Where at least you can see some of the background of the actual website. Now, I noticed that they're looking a lot more like this, where they just take over the whole page, and then you have to click this thing to get rid of it. Again, they're kind of annoying, but the reason that this tactic is used is because it works. It does get people to actually sign up for stuff, or in this case, sign up for the mailing list. It's for any consumer internet company, any consumer internet startup. So the dating startup, the foodie dating startup might want to pay particular attention. But this basically says that if you can make your users feel good about themselves, they're going to talk about you more, they're going to share about you more, and you'll create a lot of advocates for your company. So what does that actually mean? I've said here, turn your users into a superhero or a comedian or an artist. Basically give them, I'm saying basically a lot, give them a reason to brag about themselves. That's fundamentally, I think that's what all of these kind of social networks, consumer internet apps like Instagram and Facebook, that's pretty much at the core of why they've become popular, I feel. So some examples besides Facebook. Nike, I think, does a really good job of this. So if we use the Nike Plus app, after your run, Nike tracks where you've run. And now it also lets you take a photo, whilst you're on the run. And then it will overlay the map, the route that you've run on your photo. And it will show all of the key metrics, like I ran this far in this amount of time, I've burned this many calories. And then it gives you the option to share that on Facebook. And I see a lot of people sharing this stuff because it makes them feel good. It makes them feel proud that they've run, that they're healthier than everyone else. That's what it comes down to, is like giving people a chance to brag about themselves. And every single time someone posts on Facebook, that's free branding for Nike. So they've done a really good job of this. And there's this whole meme now where people run in like weird shapes, and they post it on Facebook. They'll run in like well, you know exactly what shape I mean. They run in various rude shapes, And then they post it to Facebook, and it's a way of, it's even more brand, well, maybe that's kind of negative branding for Nike, but lots of people are seeing it, at least. Often you'll incentivize users to invite another user. Happens in e-commerce a lot. The two-way incentive says that if a user invites another user, you should reward both of them. So, the classic example of this is PayPal. This is a quote by Peter Thiel, who was one of the co-founders of PayPal, he's now one of the biggest venture capitalists in the world. They were famous because they raised a certain amount of money, not that much. I think they raised $10–20 million or something like that for their first round. But then they basically spent all of that on customer acquisition by giving. So if I've invited a friend, they would give the friend $10 in cash, just cash, and then they would give me $10 in cash. So it would cost $20 for each new customer. He said 10% daily growth, 100 million users, that's good, but they had no revenue because they were spending all their money, and exponentially growing cost structure, that was bad. He says that it was very unstable, but all the growth helped them get their next round of funding, so it kind of all worked out in the end. But if they hadn't got that round of funding, they would have been completely screwed. Dropbox does this in a slightly more scalable way. They give you 500 megabytes of extra space if you invite someone, and then they give that person an extra 500 megabytes too. So this is a lot more, the cost structure for this is a lot more scalable for Dropbox. It probably costs them 1 cent to give you an extra 500 megabytes. Okay, so we're on to task 4. We're just going to do this. Yeah, we're just going to, this is the work. You haven't seen it? The movie, The Social Network, about Facebook? Yeah. You remember what happened to Eduardo Saverin? He got screwed, right? Okay, so here's the story. The CEO has screwed the CMO out of some equity. So the CMO is breaking away and starting their own startup, competitor to the original company. So who was the CMO of this team? Oh, sorry. Okay. So we're breaking away, and you're poaching some of your co-workers. I'll choose for you so that it's not awkward. So, and you were the CEO, right? Okay.
Why do you poach the CEO again?
So, is this it, or is some people?
I think it's us. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, so this 4 is the new competitor. Okay, and you guys are the originals. All right. So who's the CMO and CEO here? Okay. CMO. Okay. Yeah, there's 2 missing, right? Okay. So we'll say that 1 more is missing. Okay. So there was 1, 2, 3, and then another 2.
No.
Another 1. Another 1.
1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
Okay, so you guys are the original. Sorry, you guys are the new competitor, and then you're the original. Okay. So the next task is we're just going to focus on that one of the tactics that we just saw in the mid stage. So we're going to imagine that we're creating the landing page now for your startup. So let's just take a look at some. This is Zero Cater. I mentioned it before, and you notice that pretty much every website and every startup has this one core message at the top of their website, usually in very, very big text. And as I said, often this is one of the most important parts of the website because it communicates the value of what your company does, differentiates you from your competitors maybe, and more importantly, it's often the only part that new users will actually read. So all of this stuff, I'm ignoring that, but that thing, I read that, as a typical user. So that was family-style meals delivered to your office, and then a nice graphic of. This is obviously not a family because they're all different, different ethnicities and whatnot. But it looks like they're a family. It's a nice photo. Work together the easy way. This is Basecamp, which is a collaboration tool. This is FreshBooks, which is an accounting software, small business accounting software designed for you, the non-accountant. This one's good because it very, very, in plain English, says who their target audience is. So this is not accounting software for accountants. It's for non-accountants. Right. So that's just 3 basic examples. And if you want to, you can go and look at a bunch of other examples. There's basically visit any website, and you'll see this headline at the top. So that's all we're going to do. We're going to brainstorm a few different headlines for your landing page. You don't have to think about the design or anything like that, just the text. So the key things you need to think about are who's your target market, what do they value, and you can think of a few different opinions on this and have a discussion. Like I said, for example, for the senior citizens instant messaging startup, are you targeting the actual senior citizens themselves, or are you targeting the sons and daughters of those senior citizens? That's up to you. And what I want us to do is each startup, each group, has to create 3 headline variations. Okay. 3 headline variations, at least 2, at least. I'm going to give you plenty of time. And to help you, there's a few different formulas here that you can use. And as I said, if you need more inspiration, just Google the term headline formulas, and you'll find a whole bunch of different patterns to use. Again, I'll leave this slide up here whilst you're discussing. So, for example, the one that I showed you before was do something desirable in a surprisingly small amount of time or effort. So there was become a certified SEO consultant in a week, or send a press release in just 1 click. Are you a target market looking to benefit in time? These might be a little bit difficult to understand, so if you want to Google headline formulas, it might explain it a bit better. But basically, in the brackets, you're supposed to plug in your own words. And as I said, you don't have to use these. You can come up with your own ideas. But a good headline should kind of suggest what the benefit is to your target audience. That's probably the main point of a headline. The point of the exercise was that you don't know when you're at the very early stages. You don't know what sells your startup, how to communicate. You have to test. So that was what we did. We conducted basically a little A/B test where we came up with some different ideas, and then we saw which one was the most effective. So that's just one thing to remember in the early stages. You can, in the early stage, well, at any stage really, in the mid stage, late stage, you can fall in love with a certain idea of a headline or a design or a logo or whatever. You can fall in love with an idea yourself, but actually until you test it with your target market, you don't know which is the most effective. Was anyone surprised by which ones were the most effective, or did you? Yeah, there were some surprises. I'm pretty sure the orgasm group knew. You knew that was going to be the most effective one. So yeah, you have to run an A/B test for your headline. You can also test designs, test your email subject lines, things like that. I use this tool to do A/B tests, Visual Website Optimizer. It's very good. You can also do experiments in Google Analytics. And that brings us to the end of this, the first part of the afternoon. So a little bit of headline optimization, A/B, which was basically an A/B test. Now we're going to think about how to bring basically bring everything together. And for this task, I'm going to send you the content from today. Send it to your email address. I'll do that in just a second. So you can have a look whilst you're discussing. Have a look at some of the tactics that we've talked about over the morning and afternoon session. And what we're going to do is in each of your startups, in each of your groups, we're going to come up with an idea for a launch campaign. So we're going to launch the startup. So just to give you an example, So for your objectives, identify a target market. I think a lot of you have done that already, which is good. Think of identify a channel to reach your target market. So by a channel, that might be a place, like a geographic location where your target market tends to be around. Or it might be a website that they go to very frequently. It might be like a Facebook group or an online forum. It might be a TV channel that they watch. It might be, channel can mean various things. Could be an Instagram influencer that they follow. Then think of a marketing idea for that channel, how to use that channel in a way, how you would execute. What would be your idea, what and why, and think of a way to use the tactics that we talked about. So the vanity hack, I think someone mentioned earlier, the can't go back hack. Anyway, I'm going to give you the content in a minute so you can refresh your memory. And remember that you're a startup, so you don't have a lot of money to spend. So sometimes in the other workshops we've done, the startups say, yeah, we're going to spend $1,000 on PPC. Sorry, you don't have $1,000. You have $0. Okay, you have some dollars, but you at this stage, you wouldn't be spending lots and lots of money on a big, flashy launch. You'd be thinking of a way to do your launch very efficiently, cost efficiently. So as an example, say we have there's a new vodka brand. So our target market, number one, we want to reach young, affluent professionals. So we've got to think about where those people are. Could be online, could be offline. So I'm just going to say offline. We're going to run an offline campaign, and we're going to set up booths giving free samples. Okay, that's a pretty easy, that's a pretty kind of standard way, I think, to launch a new food or drink brand. But here's the growth hacky twist part. We'll only give drinks to groups of 4 or more. So if they come by themselves, we won't give them a free sample. But if they bring friends, we'll give them a free sample. And maybe we'll ask them to use a specific hashtag or something. Maybe we'll create some kind of website or some kind of app that helps them to invite their friends along to this launch campaign. But the point would be, if we force them to ask their friends, they'll use social media, they'll share about our brand, and that will help us get a bit more traction, get a bit more conversations going about our brand. So this is kind of a framework that you can use when you're brainstorming. Number one, think about whether you're going to use outbound tactics or inbound tactics. So outbound, generally, that's where you're kind of pushing yourself in front of customers. Inbound would be where you earn a customer's interest, where you create content in order to bring them to you. Outbound, most traditional marketing is outbound, where you're kind of, what was the word we used earlier? I can't remember now. Invasive, where it's a bit more invasive. You're a bit more kind of in the customer's face. You're trying to get in front of them by buying advertising or going to trade shows and setting up a booth, setting up events, buying PR, like engaging with a PR agency. You probably don't have the money to do that if you're a startup in this exercise. Inbound marketing is where you're trying to earn a customer's interest in order to bring them to you. So it's the other way around. The way that you do that with content, you use blog content, so you think the piggyback hack would be useful here. Social media, so you might want to think about the unboxing hack if you're doing physical goods. Creating content like ebooks and infographics and things like that. And for each of these, whether you choose outbound or inbound, this is just to give you an idea. This is just to give you some inspiration. For either of these, just think about the what, the how, and the why. So like the execution. So when you present to the rest of the group, don't just say, we're going to create awesome blog content. It's very easy to say that. I want to know what kind of blog content you would use for your launch. So step 1, discuss in your team possible strategies. This is the last exercise, and this one's a bit more creative, so I'll give you 15 minutes in the beginning to discuss. And then we're just going to present. So I'll leave this. You might want to note these down. Identify a target market. I think you've done that. Channel to reach them. And then your marketing idea for that channel. I will leave this slide on the screen as you're talking. And I'm going to send you the content to the email thread right now. So, anyone have any questions before we start? Objectives? Yep, sure. Saying that you have $0 is too limiting, but don't just say PPC. As much as Google would love to have you spend thousands of dollars on your startup launch campaign, I think PPC is very useful at a later stage, especially for things like e-commerce, where you have where the value of each customer is very clear, because you can kind of work out the average value. Average spending per customer if you're doing e-commerce. For other startups, if, for example, for the group who said that they were just aiming for a high valuation, and for you guys it's a bit less clear if you have no concrete business model. You might end up spending loads and loads of money on PPC and never getting the benefit back. Okay, so is that clear? Launch campaign, figure out how you're going to launch and how you're going to employ some of the tactics that we've talked about today. Okay, so go ahead, start your discussion, give you 15 minutes, and then in the meantime, I'm going to email you the content.
Really very viral on internet, and it is among one of the most watched videos on YouTube. So we thought of creating a good video ourselves while we are focusing on luxury pet food, and our tagline, I just said, like, why should humans have all the luxury? Your cat deserve it too. So the video concept is like, we'll have a nice fine dine restaurant with a very good setting and candle dinner and everything, and a very good chef. He cooks food and decorates it in a very good way and brings. But when he brings, it's not the humans but cats.
Oh wow! Okay.
This is the video that we'll create to start with, and then we'll try to post it on different social media communities, especially catering to the community related to cats. But not just the video. Video would not bring us more traction. Like, it would get a lot of views. With the video, we would also have an element to it where we would ask users to send a picture of their cat with like showing what luxury they can give to the cat.
Okay.
And the winner, the best cat photo, will be featured on the packet of our next packet.
Okay.
For next few months.
So you mean like, here's my cat driving my Mercedes kind of thing? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So,
Like.
You need to show that what luxury you are providing to your cat.
Okay.
Driving Mercedes can be one.
Yeah.
And other stuff maybe in a bathtub or at a nice bedroom.
Okay.
So the most luxurious photo will be featured on our back. So that's how we are going to same time, while the contest is running, we'll produce a lot of hygiene content.
Mm-hmm.
Hygiene content is like the content would not tell about the benefits of our food, but it would tell generally about the cat nutrition.
Mm.
Like cats are usually carnivorous, and their eating habits is different from that of humans or even dogs.
Mm-hmm.
And cats are really inflexible with their food.
Mm.
If you don't take care of that, you're going to screw your life.
Mm-hmm. Is that your actual marketing tagline?
If you wish to own a cat, you need to know all this stuff. So we'll blog regularly. We have good bloggers in our team.
Yep.
Regularly about this stuff, and indirectly, like the blogger is so and so at cattrade.com. So drive traffic to our website. In the website, we'll have on the main page, on the landing page itself, the tagline, the video, and the contest details. So this is how we are planning to launch, and when we get the photos from the users, it's a vanity
Mm-hmm.
vanity hack, and I hope the photos itself will create a lot of traction.
Yep.
And,
Conversations.
that's
Yeah.
all.
Great.
Leverage specifically the cat blogging portals and forums.
Okay.
Because being luxury food is one thing for cats. You kind of need to give an image that we know what we're doing and we know what is the best for your cat. So it's not just on food, it could be on diet, it could be on best grooming, how you sell them, how you, I don't know, cut the nails or something, how you brush them in a specific way to get rid of the extra fur, especially for the furry ones, that sort of thing. And through that, we actually increase our brand,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we become much more trustworthy. And at the same time, we also do something like partnerships, specifically through like cat cafes or even cat spas or hotels.
Cafes.
Yeah, cat cafes. We have them here.
Yes.
I don't know why, but we have them here. So for those who go there, I mean, for people who patrons these places, they might bring their own pets.
Mm-hmm.
So other than you yourself dine at the cafe, why not have our food, our brand of food, also available there?
Ah, okay.
Right. And the
Interesting.
thing is that since we are leveraging on the cat blogs, it can be a win-win whereby they sell our food. At the same time, we also promote that these cafes or even spas or hotels happen to have our food there as well. So if at a one particular time, let's say our samples is not enough, you really want to like test it, you can go to try one of these cafes and let your cat eat. If your cat loves it, then by all means, order from us eventually. Just click online and everything. And the main finale, especially for on a yearly event, will be the cat expos.
Mm-hmm.
So on the cat shows, we'll have a booth there as well. We'll still give samples, but the idea is that all the cat owners, if they have cats, have them probably dressed up in a costume, take a picture, put it on Instagram, put a tag, furry seeds, right? And ask for 5 friends to like that picture. So if they can prove that, okay, they got 5 likes, okay, good. Here's a sample for you. Free sample.
Okay.
Okay. So that's the idea for the launch. Yeah.
Delicious.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been there. I had the situation before. So it's like, let's say, instead of focusing on the elderly, right? Why not we just focus for the youngsters who will spread the word to the elderly itself?
Mm-hmm.
Since our main point is actually the ease of use of the application, so we should emphasize this in our marketing material. So for the channel to reach the youngsters and the elderly, right? We will adopt 2 kinds of methods: the inbound and outbound marketing. So let me elaborate more on that. So for the outbound marketing, right? Basically, we're targeting the elderly and the youngsters, right? So for youngsters, we'll go to the office areas and stuff, so that we can just tell them we give up, and because due to budget constraint, right? We're gonna give up flyers and stuff to them and just demonstrate how to use the application, and so that they will see the point that this application is very easy to use. very suitable for the older generations to communicate with their other people.
Mhm.
So as for the elderly, right, we kind of adopt another method. So it's like they prefer to talk face to face, so that we should show our sincerity. I mean, it's better to talk to them face to face because it's like it's more trustworthy.
Mhm.
Since they don't use internet that much, right? So I don't think reaching them through internet and social media is a very good idea.
Good.
So we will just put them in common areas such as markets or even parks where they have their Tai Chi.
Yep.
So it's like you want to find a Tai Chi buddy, use our application because we have a channel for that, right? So yeah, makes sense. So as for the inbound marketing, right? Since we are targeting the social media people, and mostly people who use social media are youngsters. So maybe you just create a viral video. I mean, a video itself which has a lot of viral elements in it,
Mhm.
so that people will just spread around the word, and perhaps, hopefully, the video get viral, so that people will just spread around through word of mouth, and people will talk about the applications, and maybe they'll be curious, and so when they try the app, they find out it's very easy to use, so that they'll just recommend it to the older generations itself.
Mhm.
That's basically how we're gonna approach our marketing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.